You know that feeling when you're lying in bed, the lights are off, and the only thing illuminating the room is the blue glow of your phone screen. You told yourself you'd check one thing, maybe a message or a single video, and then go to sleep. But then 30 minutes pass, then an hour. Your thumb moves with a rhythm that feels almost automatic, a repetitive flicking motion that you aren't even consciously directing anymore. You aren't exactly enjoying yourself. You might even feel a bit tired or hollow. But for some reason, the idea of stopping feels strangely difficult, like trying to pull your hand out of moving water. If you've ever felt this, you aren't lacking willpower. You aren't lazy, and you aren't failing. What you're experiencing is a very specific, very intentional psychological phenomenon. You aren't just looking at a screen, you are participating in a highly engineered feedback loop designed to bypass your conscious mind and speak directly to your nervous system. To understand why this happens, we have to look past the apps themselves and look at how our brains process anticipation. Most people think we scroll because we're looking for something we like. We think we're looking for pleasure. But psychologically, that isn't quite right. We aren't scrolling for the reward. We are scrolling for the possibility of a reward. In psychology, this is known as a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. If a slot machine paid out every single time you pulled the lever, you'd get bored pretty quickly. The thrill doesn't come from winning. It comes from the fact that you might win on the next pull. Your feed works the same way. One post is a mundane update from a distant acquaintance. The next is a repetitive ad. But the third? The third is a video that actually makes you laugh or a piece of news that sparks your interest. Because you don't know when that win is coming, your brain stays in a state of high alert. You keep flicking your thumb because the next scroll could be the one that gives you that hit of satisfaction. This creates a state of searching rather than finding. When you're in this loop, your brain is flooded with dopamine. But contrary to popular belief, dopamine isn't the chemical of pleasure. It's the chemical of more. It's the neurochemical that drives us to seek, to hunt, and to crave. It's what keeps you leaning forward, peering into the screen, convinced that the most interesting thing you've ever seen is just 1 inch below the fold. And here is where the design of the apps themselves begins to change our behavior. In the early days of the internet, things had endings. You reached the bottom of a page and had to click next. You finished a video and had to click play on another one. These are what psychologists call stopping cues. They are brief moments that force your conscious mind to wake up and ask, do I want to keep doing this? Modern apps have systematically removed every single one of those cues. The endless scroll means there is no bottom. The autoplay means there is no pause. By removing these friction points, the apps allow you to stay in a flow state, but it's a passive flow. It's a state where your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision making and long-term planning, essentially goes offline. You aren't choosing to watch the next video. You are simply failing to stop. But the real reason it's so hard to put the phone down isn't just about the mechanics of the scroll. It's about what the scrolling is doing for your emotional state. For many of us, the phone has become a tool for emotional regulation. When we feel a flicker of boredom or a pang of anxiety or the weight of a long day, the feed offers an immediate escape. It's a way to go numb. It's a low-effort way to quiet the noise in our own heads. This is where the behavior shifts from a habit into a deeper pattern of identity. When we use scrolling to avoid the quiet moments of our lives, we begin to lose our tolerance for being alone with our own thoughts. The feed becomes an externalized nervous system. We rely on it to tell us how to feel, what to be outraged by, and what to find funny. We aren't just consuming content. We are outsourcing our internal experience to an algorithm. And here's where it gets interesting. We often blame ourselves for this. We tell ourselves we have no self-control. But the aha moment comes when you realize that your brain is actually doing exactly what it was evolved to do. For thousands of years, humans survived by being hyper-attentive to new information. In a wilderness environment, a new sound or a sudden movement could mean survival. Our brains are hardwired to prioritize newness. The apps didn't create this drive, they just hijacked it. They've taken an ancient survival mechanism, the need to monitor our environment for information, and placed it in a digital world where the information is infinite. You aren't addicted in the way we traditionally think of it. You are caught in a mismatch between your biology and your technology. Your brain thinks it's scanning the horizon for predators or food, but it's actually just scanning a social media feed for likes and memes. This realization shifts the narrative from one of weakness to one of awareness. It's not about fixing a broken part of yourself. It's about recognizing that you are navigating a landscape that was designed to be unnavigable. When you see your thumb move to that app icon for the 10th time in an hour, that isn't a sign that you are failing. It's a sign that the system is working exactly as it was intended to work. We often feel a sense of guilt after a long scrolling session, a feeling that we've wasted time. But that guilt itself is part of the cycle. It creates a low-level stress that makes us want to return to the very thing that distracted us in the first place, seeking comfort in the familiar glow. The deeper pattern here isn't just about the time lost, it's about the subtle way our sense of self begins to fragment. When we spend hours in the passive scroll, we aren't participating in our own lives. We are observers of 1,000 other lives, most of them curated and performative. We begin to measure our own messy, unedited reality against a constant stream of highlights. This doesn't just make us tired, it makes us feel profoundly disconnected. But that disconnection is often the very thing that keeps us scrolling. We are looking for a connection that the feed can't actually provide. We look at the red notification bubbles because they represent a possibility. The possibility that someone is thinking of us, that we belong, that we are seen. Every notification is a tiny promise of social validation. And even when that promise turns out to be an empty ad or a generic like, the brain stays hooked on the maybe. Understanding this doesn't necessarily make the urge go away, but it changes your relationship with it. It pulls back the curtain on the wizard behind the screen. You begin to see the notifications not as important updates, but as fishing hooks. You see the endless scroll not as a doorway to the world, but as a treadmill that goes nowhere. Once you see the pattern, you can't really unsee it. You start to notice the physical sensation in your chest when you reach for your phone out of habit. You start to recognize the specific type of mental fog that sets in after 20 minutes of mindless consumption. This isn't about being better or more productive. It's about reclaiming the ability to be present in your own mind. It was never random. It wasn't a lack of discipline. It was a perfectly executed psychological trap built on the foundations of how your brain works. And the moment you realize that you aren't the one in control of the scroll, you've already taken the first step toward moving differently. Understanding yourself and the way your environment shapes you is where everything begins. If this explained something for you, there's always more to uncover. Understanding the why behind our behavior is the only way we ever truly start to see clearly.